4, pages 26 to 28. We're going to be skipping question number 5. Other than that, we're going to be doing the whole section. Okay, so economic intervention. The government does need to get involved with our economy and our lives to some extent. It can't just completely stay out, especially the market, because free enterprise or capitalism, the market economy, has no rules in its purest form. Just businesses can do whatever they want, and the assumption that some have is that competition will make everything equal. Well, in reality and in history, that's just not the case. There has been many situations where an individual or a group of individuals have gained so much power over a certain product or good or service that they completely dominate everything having to do with that good or service, and then they drop quality and increase prices to benefit themselves at the expense of the consumers and the economy and the country as a whole. Trust is one example. That's when a group of individuals or a group of businesses come together and agree to never go below a certain price point. They might compete in other ways, advertising, quality, but they agree keep the price at a certain minimum level so that we all make profit, even if we're not all going to be number one. Monopolies. Kind of the same thing, except for now it's just one person or one company that controls everything. Like, for example, once upon a time there was one company that controlled all oil in all of America. You can imagine how wealthy that guy was. John Rockefeller was his name. And he just dominated oil so that no one else could come in and sell oil. You had to go to him to buy oil. And as a result, he started raising prices to take advantage, and the economy, people's lives began to suffer as a result. So government got involved and outlawed those things. They also outlawed advertising, false advertising, that is. You can advertise, you just can't lie. Many companies are allowed to leave out certain details, but you cannot lie in advertising as a result of government intervention, government laws. Other ways that governments have gotten involved in our lives, our day-to-day lives, is in trying to protect workers, limiting working hours. So if you work more than 40 hours, you get overtime. And if you don't want to work overtime, then many jobs have to be very careful about forcing you. Now, there's ways around that as far as like requiring overtime. But still, if they're going to give you overtime, they have to pay you extra. So there's some disincentive for some companies to do overtime because they may not be able to afford it. So limiting working hours, making sure you're getting paid what you're worth. Collective bargaining. Employers have to give you the right to grieve, give you the right to complain, and they have to hear you out. Now, they don't have to give you what you want, but there's many laws saying that they cannot deny you the ability to form unions. There's wages, minimum wage. That's government intervention, so that businesses can't just decide, I'm just going to make you work for $2 an hour. Take it or go someplace else. Oh, wait a minute, everybody else charges $3 an hour, $2 an hour. I mean, if everybody's working together to keep prices as low as possible or wages as low as possible, there's not going to be many choices. So the government, or the choices for you to be able to support yourself or a family. So the government has gotten involved to make sure there's a minimum wage. Safety and health standards. The government gets involved to make sure that no company can sneak in without being punished anything that might harm you or your family or your neighbors or anybody. So whether it's food or making sure certain things are not harmful if you eat them, like toys and stuff like that, or paint, government gets involved to make sure that no company tries to sneak that stuff in. Some examples of how the government has protected. For one thing, it usually comes as a result of public demand, voting, people voicing their opinion, using their voice in government. For example, in 1906, there was a book by Upton Sinclair called The Jungle that exposed the meat packing industry and how disgusting the practices were. the companies then were selling rotted pieces of meat. There might be bugs or maggots or cockroaches that fall into like ground meat and make hamburgers out of, and they would just sell it anyways. And he took pictures of it and described it, wrote this book. People read this book. It was a huge seller, and people started demanding, like, oh my goodness, this meat we're eating is making us sick. So as a result, decades later, but as a result, eventually, once enough noise was made by the people, the government developed the Food and Drug Administration, so that any consumable items, so foods and drugs that are released to American consumers to buy, has to go through certain safety standards, and that's what the FDA accomplishes or tries to accomplish, to make sure anything you're eating, anything you're ingesting, won't hurt you, or if there's a possibility of it hurting you, then they make sure that company lets you know this may happen if you consume this. And in a similar effect, in 1972, the Consumer Product Safety Commission was developed, and that's a commission that makes sure that non-edible things are safe. So, like, you got a picture of a milk bottle there. Not so much watching the milk, the Food and Drug Administration would do that, but the CPSC, Consumer Product Safety Commission, they'll make sure that there's no toxins in the plastic, so that the plastic won't poison the baby. The toys that do they have lead in the paint that would make kids sick or mentally messed up? That's one of the things that Consumer Product Safety Commission does, is making sure that the actual products can't hurt you. Things like blenders exploding on you, they can't do that, and if they do, then companies can be punished if they didn't try hard enough to meet standards. Economic security and stability is another thing government gets involved with. So the Social Security in 1995 Act was passed with the goal of trying to make sure that people have certain safety nets, so that if you lose wages, whether it's through losing your job, it's because you retired, you're injured, that there's a monthly payment safety net in place to make sure that losing a job for a reason that's maybe not your fault doesn't destroy you and your family. Because we've gone through times where massive layoffs and massive job losses have just crushed our economy. So Social Security is supposed to be something we all pay into, and then we get back from it as we get to points in our lives when we're no longer able to work, whether it's through injury or retirement, whatever the case may be. Two ways that the government tries to maintain economic security and stability is through monetary policy and fiscal policy. Monetary policy is regulation of the money supply by the Federal Reserve. The Federal Reserve is an agency of the Department of the Treasury. And they try to counteract slow economies by lowering interest rates, reserve requirements, and from buying bonds from banks. So kind of like giving banks special loans to keep them strong, keep them going so that they can maintain the currency supply and the flow of income. The other way is through fiscal policy, which is controlling how much money this government brings in through taxes and how much money it spends from that tax money. So how they're spending to help people, or how much money they're taking, or how much money they're not taking, which affects how much you're paying, can have a huge impact on security and stability of the economy. They also do a lot to try to protect the environment, because again, the free market with no rules is only about profit. So sometimes that profit means sacrificing the environment. Well, the Environmental Protection Agency was developed in 1970 to fight that. So it's constantly testing and testing for people who are polluting, companies that are polluting. They regulate, and they actually do enforcement in the form of fines. Criminal trials, if pollution is proven to directly harm people, can be brought against companies. But a lot of the punishments by the EPA is through fines. Alright, go ahead and go to Video Assignment Unit 4, pages 29 to 31. That is also due in the next class. Thank you, I'll see you.